Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Many of you may know that my husband died suddenly and completely unexpectedly 5 months ago yesterday. It happened on a Sunday. He hadn't been feeling well, and he was planning to go to the doctor the next day to find out what was wrong. But he wanted to go to church on Sunday, and so we went, and he was running the sound, not the sound, it was the equipment for the live streaming of the service. He began feeling worse, and he was gone within probably 15 minutes.
Wow.
We didn't even know that he had heart problems. He didn't know that he did. He thought he didn't. So, in the aftermath, I joined a grief group. So they're all women. Could be men, but it's all women that come. And the idea behind this is we can get together and talk in a private setting where you can just say anything you want, talk about what you're feeling if you're feeling something that needs to be shared, to try to be together through it. And what I've heard, among many other things, is a question that I wanted to address somewhat this afternoon. And the question is, I'll make it back from the microphone because this kind of got loud when I heard this. It was, why? That's what I want to know. Why is this happening? Why do I have to suffer like this? And am I such a terrible person that God would have to punish me this way? I'll have to say that from my church background, I was kind of shocked when I heard this. You know, this is really blurting it out. But she meant it. You know, she was suffering. There was no doubt about it. And so when Pastor Remy asked me to speak, I thought, this is the one time in my life I probably could speak about grief. And maybe I should. So, here today to speak to you about grief. We all encounter pain and suffering in our lives. We see it in others, and it makes us profoundly uncomfortable. Does that resonate with you too? It is very uncomfortable to see it. We long to help, but how? How do we help? So my purpose today is to share with you some of what I've learned about grief, specifically through the loss of a spouse. But it could also be other losses, and there are all kinds of loss of good health, loss of a job, certainly loss of children or career, anything. There's disappointment with friendships and disappointment in relationships. The list goes on, but it's all part of the grief of loss. And all this, to try to follow Pastor Burmese instructions, is in less than 20 minutes and with one major point. I will do the best I can. Well, briefly, let me start by saying that there are no easy answers to grief. There's no quick fix. There's many ways to grieve, as there are people that you encounter that are grieving. And there's no schedule at all. It can be over quickly, or it can last for years. It may never end, as people who've lost children will tell you. It never goes away, never at all. Just tell you, I have a younger sister who lost her then 21-year-old son unexpectedly, and it was a sad situation. It was, of course, a drug overdose, like they often are. 9 years later, she's doing okay, but she is still suffering. It will never be over. So anyway, grief is one of those constants, and there's no easy answer, none at all. But however long it lasts, and no matter how severe your grief is, the triune God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, will be with you through it all. He will never leave you or forsake you, as we read in Hebrews 13:5. This, just for organization, is the one major point. He will always be with you. He will never leave you or forsake you. You may have heard of the classic the classic stages of grief. You start with denial. This can't be happening to me. This can't be happening. Then it goes on to anger. We understand anger. Some bargaining. Oh, if you'll only take this trial away, I'll never do anything wrong again. I will really mend my ways. That's the bargaining stage, and it's a common stage. Then comes depression, where there's many phases of depression, where sometimes you just don't feel like getting up in the morning, you don't feel like getting out of bed, you don't want to do much of anything, sit around, feeling sorry for yourself too, but that's a stage. And finally, when things are going well, if they ever do, acceptance. Say, I'm unhappy, but I can accept it. Those are the stages. Some people have suggested that it's more cycles, not necessarily stages, but cycles, where the same feelings recur over and over again. But however it is, it's unique to everybody. Not everybody goes through the same things. Not everybody does it in the same order. But there are some things that we all seem to go through a little bit. Now, I'll tell you my story real quickly. And let me emphasize, this is not typical. There is no typical. So everybody's story is going to be a little bit different. When Gary died, of course, I was shocked and I was sad. But almost immediately, through God's grace, through God's mercy, I began to see His mercy. That Gary would never have to suffer long. He would never have to go through a long, debilitating illness. He would never have to suffer much pain. He would never get to a place where he couldn't take care of himself. And probably worst of all, if you knew Gary, would be he would never have to go through senile dementia or Alzheimer's. That would have been probably, if he realized that would have been just really painful for him. He would never have to do any of those things. His troubles were all over, and because he loved God and he tried as hard as he could to serve God, he's safe. Everything is okay for him. And it makes me feel better to think, well, okay, then so why am I sad? Well, I'm feeling sorry for myself, of course. Well, that's okay. I can feel sorry for myself, but it does kind of put it in perspective. I'm not grieving for him. I'm grieving for myself. And so anyway, but this, like I say, this is not typical. But the comfort of these thoughts that I began to have almost immediately was just almost overwhelming. I'm so grateful for it. But let me emphasize again, this is not typical. Because there is no typical. God just chose to give me this mercy, or give us this mercy, both Gary and me. The same circumstances wouldn't have been mercy to somebody else. I've known other people who've suffered loss, that unexpected death, that were still grieving and uncontrollably, practically, more than 2 years later. Just couldn't get over it because they wished they had more time, a little more time to spend together, a little time to get used to the idea that they were going to be alone, to get prepared for it, and they wanted to have a chance to even talk some things out, maybe to make peace with each other. There are lots of things, because the human dynamics are not simple. But to me, it was mercy. It was mercy for me and mercy for him. But I don't think I'm any better than anybody else because I had this mercy. And I don't think Gary is any better either. God knows what we need. He knows what's best for us and gives it to us according to his grace and mercy and his pleasure. So, leaving that alone for the moment, what have I learned? That's why I'm here, is not to talk about myself, but what have I learned from all this? And is there anything that can be of help to you too? I'd like to look at 2 Corinthians 1, 3-5. This is a very interesting scripture, I think, in terms of suffering. And I'm going to be reading out of the New King James. 2 Corinthians 1, 3-5. Blessed be the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of mercies and the God of all comfort, who comforts us in all our tribulation, or all our troubles, all of our suffering, that we may be able to comfort those others who are in any trouble, with the comfort which we ourselves are comforted by God. So, from this, God comforts us so that we can comfort others. The work of comfort is primarily His. And I just get to hang around. If I'm doing anything at all, I just get to hang around with Him while He's doing it. The scripture suggests He's training us to be comforters too. And I like the idea of that. Yeah, there's something going on here, more than just about what I'm feeling and what I'm feeling. And what do you think will happen after He's trained us to comfort others? Do you think He's going to be absent from the process? Just leave us to take care of the comfort on our own? I can't think so. I think He's going to continue there. He's going to still be there, comforting us, but helping us to maybe be of a little bit of help too. I think He'll be with us and still doing most of the comforting, but letting us participate. And that's something pretty neat. Let's take a look at Job. Job was the ultimate sufferer. He lost 7 children and all of his wealth in one day. And then he was struck by severe illness. And his wife, from what we can tell, what we read, was no help at all. Job's friends came to comfort him, and they sat with him for 7 days and never said a word. But then they began to talk. And as bad as things were before, when his friends began to talk to try to comfort him, things went downhill quickly. Oh yeah. We've probably all read some of this before. But they talked and they talked and they talked and they talked about how good and just God is. They went on and on about it. And when I read through it, I've said, well, yeah, they're right. You know, there's not much here that I could dispute. They're not saying he's unjust or evil or anything like that or unkind. They're saying right things. But did this help? Far from it. Things got worse. Things were worse than others. And when finally Job just couldn't take it any longer, he just lashed out at them. Miserable comforters are you all. And then he said, well, oh, that you would be silent, and it would be your wisdom if you do. In other words, why don't you just shut up? Because things are a lot worse than you're making things worse than they were before. So, and to underline that Job, in a way, had a point. Toward the end of the book, God told his friends, and this was in Job 42:7, he said, God told his friends he was angry with them because they hadn't spoken of him what was right, as Job had. All that Job's railing about, he was righteous and everything, he apparently was somewhat right. I mean, we know that Job hadn't sinned like his friends assumed he had and were accusing him of, but still, I don't have the wisdom to see where they went wrong, except that they talked when they shouldn't have. They should have been listening, or at least being quiet. Just sitting there with Job was a lot better than when they started talking. And I'm afraid we Christians can be a lot like Job's friends. We try so hard and we mean so well, and we just make everything worse. We want to offer comfort by defending God. You've heard some of the things that people who are suffering find just, well, maddening and offensive. They say, well, God needed him more than you do, so he took him from you. Or, well, if you're a child, a baby, well, you're young yet. You know, you can have another baby. Or, you're young yet. you'll find somebody else to love and marry. I mean, there are all kinds of things. Our capacity for saying the wrong thing is pretty much never ending. And so I'm afraid, and all this is done with the best of intentions. We want to give God the glory, and we never want to accuse him. We want to make the other person feel better, and by telling them it's all for the best, that's what we're trying to do. But they just, whatever, and even if these things are correct, they're just not ready to hear it yet, and that makes things worse. So when we try to defend God and try to explain it in hope of comfort, sometimes things just backfire. And what we say may be correct, but maybe we're just, they're just not ready. And so we've just added to their pain. The last thing that we want to do. So the more I have learned, or more I do learn about grief, the more I want to listen, and the less I want to talk. I think that's about the best thing. God is providing the comfort. He's the primary comforter anyway. And since I'm just there, I don't really know what to say, but he's able to provide the comfort that they need. And maybe the grieving friend, I don't really know what to say, but maybe they'll want to talk if I'm there to listen. That may be the best thing that a person can do, trying to comfort a friend. But being there is just about all I can do. But listening is hard. Try to keep your mouth shut and listen. It's not easy to do that. So we want to fix problems. We're Americans, and fixing it is the primary thing we do. In our American culture, it's a get her done culture. If it takes a woman 9 months to have a baby, let's just assign 9 women to this project and knock the thing out in a month. That's what we like to do. It's only a slight exaggeration. That's how we operate. But grief doesn't work like that. I'm afraid that we want the grief to be over and let everything get back to normal, partly because we're uncomfortable with it. We know they're uncomfortable, but we're uncomfortable too. And it's no fun to hang out with people that are grieving. So it takes quite a bit of, a lot of grace to be able to keep our mouths shut and to be there for a grieving friend, to do more listening and a lot less talking. Grief is a long, slow, rambling and stumbling walk, and with many setbacks. And it's never a sprint to the finish line. You can't hurry it along. And this is the secondary point. The first point was that God is the comforter; He'll always be with us. Secondary point is that if I want to help others, I should listen more and talk less. Something practical to do if you just have to do something, and we like to do something, is send a card. I never cared much for cards before, but I got quite a few within the first few weeks after Gary died. And every day I'd look for the mail. When mail came, I'd sit down with the cards that came and open them and read them and have a good cry, and then I'd feel better. And it really helped a lot. I just decided I'm going to try harder to send out cards to people in that situation. I still am not doing very well, but I intend to. That is one thing that never hurts. Just send a card if you feel like you have to do something. But I never minded people if my friends didn't send me cards, or people. I was surprised at the ones I got and loved receiving them. But if people don't, that was fine too. That God comforts us. He knows the way. I certainly got plenty. So anyway, I'm thankful for them, but that's just one thing you could do. But I'd like to go back to this question of why. Because when I first heard this, when somebody at the grief group blurted this out, I was only sitting all this is confidential, so I can't tell you anything about this, but I was only sitting a couple of chairs down from her. And I was it really got to me, and I thought, why? This is what people who are suffering are seeing this, and they're feeling it, and there are a lot of the women there probably who are thinking just the same thing, but have been too timid or too polite to say it. So why? That's the question. Why do we have to suffer? This is the question that never goes away. We're always confronted with this, and if you deal with grieving people, you will hear it over and over again. It will never go away. If you're really a friend, okay, what do you say? If you have to say something, you're trying to listen, you're trying not to, but sometimes you have to say something. You can't just be stoic and sit silently while they're trying to talk to you. So if you do have to say something, if you're really a friend, you might say something like, I don't know why you're suffering like this, but I do want to be here with you. May I pray for you? And even if they say no, you can still pray for them anyway, of course. But you could say then, could I bring a pizza over, and we can talk if you feel like it. Just to be with them, spend some time with them, to offer that. That may be the best thing you could do. I would also, if they say yes, I could come over. I hope I would pray for wisdom and the ability to talk less, listen more, and if there is something I need to say, that God would show me what it is. As I just don't know. I want to be a friend. But what about your own private journey when it's your time to grieve? Because I'm afraid it's going to come to you if it hasn't already, and it probably has already in one way or another. And I'd like to share with you just a few thoughts I found helpful in my own experience, just for me. Maybe they can help you, maybe not, but if they, just take them for whatever they're worth, if anything. The first thing I've thought about is, maybe why is the wrong question. Why? There's no easy answer on why. Maybe a better question is, to what end? What can this suffering do? Now, here we have some guidance from Scripture. James 1:2-4 says, "Count it all joy when you endure sufferings of all kinds. The trying of your faith produces patience. Let patience have its perfect work, that you may be perfect and entire, wanting nothing." God values faith. We kind of get that. We get that impression. He values faith, and suffering can produce stronger faith. And then there's one. This is one that I just love. It's in Deuteronomy 8:15-16. I'll find it here. It says, God is talking about, or Moses is talking about, whoever wrote it, about the children of Israel's wandering through the wilderness. Who led you through that great and terrible wilderness, in which were fiery serpents and scorpions and thirsty land where there was no water? Who brought water for you out of the rock of flint? Who fed you in the wilderness with manna, which your fathers did not know, that he might humble you and that he might test you to do you good in the end. Or as the King James says, to humble you and to prove you, to do you good at your latter end. And I thought, wow, that gives some dignity to suffering. If you know what, you're suffering. We've never suffered with scorpions and serpents and wandering in the wilderness. So this was real suffering, but to humble you and prove you, to do you good at your latter end. Sorry. And so I think that to what end is a better question, at least for me to ask for myself, and perhaps it would be for you too. And then there are a couple of other things to consider. When I start to feel sorry for myself, there's some things I say to myself that I would never say to anybody else. And this is only useful to me, but the question is, why not? Why not? Why shouldn't I have some suffering in my life? Do I think I should be exempt from what the rest of the world goes through? And the answer to that, of course, is, come on, don't be ridiculous. Suffering is part of the human life package. We don't get out of this world without it. And it is for our good. And I'm not immune from it. I shouldn't be. I should go through what others go through with the great comfort and understanding that God is there all the time. That is what it would be hard to take, is you think that God had abandoned you. But He's not. He says He won't. And He can give you what you need so that you know that He hasn't. So, but God is, in 1 Corinthians 10:13 we read that there has no temptation or trouble taken you, but such as is common to man. But God is faithful, who will not allow you to be tempted above what you're able, but with everything will give you strength so you can bear it. In conclusion, summing up what the little I've learned about grief and suffering, God is with you through your suffering, no matter what you have to go through. The Good Shepherd is at work. He's redeeming it. He is the comforter. He's doing the heavy lifting. And when we work to comfort others, I think He's still doing the heavy lifting. And we just get to hang around, participating, putting a face on His care for others, and getting to experience it ourselves, as well as seeing the experience that He's giving to others. Thank you.